Who has the best rotation in the NL East? On today's episode of Locked On Braves, we're going to break down each rotation in the division and answer that very question. Also, could Ian Anderson be in for a breakout year? Also, it looks like we could be going for a delayed season as the CBA talks are going nowhere. We'll discuss all that on today's episode. So let's get into it.
Hey, this is Stacey Gotsoulias,
DC Lundberg,
Ryan Finkelstein,
Taylor Blake Ward,
host of Locked On Yankees,
Locked On Mariners,
Locked On Mets,
Locked On Angels,
and you're listening to Locked On Braves.
Locked On Braves,
Locked On Braves,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we are talking about your favorite teams every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at shortstopball. Check out my bio there to see where I am covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves in written form over at tomahawktake.com. Also cover prospects in AA South for Prospects 1500, cover the Birmingham Barons as well, and I talk about college baseball, which is the main baseball going on right now. So if you're not a college baseball fan, you might want to become one. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter, the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves, where you can be part of the podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well. It really does help out the podcast, so make sure you subscribe there as well. And thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. Right now, during the lockout, we'll continue to post episodes 3 days a week, a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, until this lockout finally ends, in which we'll go back to 5 days a week. And let me remind you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. On today's episode, we are going to start a series of NL East division rankings, looking at positional groups and ranking them in the division. And today we're going to start with the starting rotation. So I'll be ranking the NL East starting rotation. And then we're also going to talk about Ian Anderson and could he be in for a breakout season in 2022? And we'll talk about the latest on the CBA negotiations as well, with a delayed season almost certain at this point. But let's start out talking about starting pitching. I've gone on record here several times. I took over this podcast during the postseason, and look, it was the starting pitching for the Braves that really carried this team. You look at the World Series in particular, they held down that big Astros offense, the best offense in all of baseball. And a lot of that work was done by the starting pitching. Now, I know Charlie Morton ended up not being a huge part of that, and the guys in the back of the bullpen ended up being great. But you look at the no-hit innings from Ian Anderson. You look at the game 6 start from Max Fried, what Kyle Wright did. I know that was technically in relief, but I mean, it was pretty much starter's work, and he is a starter. The starters were really huge for the Braves in that postseason run, winning the World Series, and I got to think they come back this year with a lot of confidence. So I'm excited about the Braves rotation, but this NL East is stacked with a lot of good starting rotations. I did my NL East team a couple of weeks ago, and the starting 5 in the NL East, I had Max Fried as the 5th starter. And like I said then, I think you put him anywhere 3 to 5th. But as good as the Braves starting rotation is, there's a lot of good starters in this division and a lot of very good rotations. So, I mean, be gentle where you see my ranking with the Braves, because, I mean, I think you could put them pretty much anywhere 1 through 4 in this division. And we'll get to the rankings a little bit later, but all of these rotations are very strong. And for these rankings, I'll just say it up front, we're going to assume health for the majority of these pitchers. Mike Soroka not included in that, but for the most part, we're going to assume health when doing these rankings. But let's start with your Atlanta Braves. And obviously, I've talked about their starting rotation a lot this offseason. I did a whole podcast going over the depth of the starting rotation. I think it's one of the deepest starting rotations in all of baseball. But looking at FanGraphs projected depth chart, they have Max Fried, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, Huascar Ynoa, and Tucker Davidson. as the starting five in the rotation. That top three, obviously very good. Just won a World Series. I would probably put Wright over really Davidson or Noah at this point. I do think Noah gets a chance in the rotation. You could also, again, outside of those top three, you have a Noah, Wright, Davidson, Muller, who are going to get the first cracks at the last two spots in there. But you also have Mike Soroka as the wild card, potentially coming back at some point, which would just really give a huge boost to the starting rotation. But again, as I've said before, I'm not counting on Soroka for anything. But if he were to come back and obviously be the Mike Soroka that we know he can be, that just elevates this rotation even more. I do think the Braves would benefit from adding one more veteran starter. It's not necessary, and I wouldn't, waste a ton of money on it. But if there's the right deal comes along, wouldn't mind having another veteran, third or fourth starter in this rotation. The Mets projected rotation: DeGrom, Scherzer, Taijuan Walker, Carlos Carrasco, and McGill is what Fangraphs has as their starting five. They also have Lucchesi, who's currently injured, and David Peterson as well for their depth there. Look, the big thing with the Mets is health. I mean, can DeGrom and Scherzer stay healthy together? Can Carlos Carrasco stay healthy? I mean, if those guys stay healthy, it's clearly one of the best rotations in all of baseball, but that is a huge question mark for them. Having DeGrom and Scherzer at the top, that is a deadly 1-2 punch for sure. They could also use another veteran starter or two, really just somebody that can eat innings, to be there as insurance if they do start to have some injuries in the rotation. So I think they could benefit from having another starter or two, really, that can come in and eat some innings if need be. Looking at the Phillies' projected rotation: Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Kyle Gibson, Suarez, Krause, and then they have Eflin, who's currently on the injured list. Again, another very solid rotation, a very good 1-2 punch. I'm curious to see how Aaron Nola bounces back. Again, like with the Braves, with the Mets, I think they would benefit from another middle of rotation type arm. They probably need a higher level arm than the Braves or Mets need. They need a definite, number 3 starter to plug in there, but they certainly could use another starting pitcher this offseason. And then the Marlins projected rotation: Alcantara, Rogers, Lopez, Eleazar, Hernandez, and Jesus Luzardo is what they have as their projected 5. But you also have Sixto Sanchez waiting in the wings, as well as Edward Cabrera. Look, this is a very good starting rotation. I would not be surprised at all if by the end of 2022, this is the best starting rotation in the NL East. A lot of really good young pitchers. They're going to be tough to score against in 2022. And then you have the Nats projected rotation of Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, Josiah Gray, Josh Rogers, and Paolo Espino. And I put Cade Cavalli on here as some depth. He really jumped up the rankings last year, but there's a chance we see him in 2022, but not definite if the Nats are, not going to be in the contention. But we'll see how that plays out. So how do I rank them? Right now, I got the Mets at number 1. Look, again, I'm assuming health. That's why I led off with that at the beginning. I'm assuming health with all these pitchers, saying Soroka. And if you assume that DeGrom and Scherzer are healthy, I mean, that is just an unbelievable 1-2 punch. I mean, Scherzer was still really good last year. Go check the numbers. DeGrom's the best pitcher in all of baseball. You get those two together and healthy at the top of the rotation, I mean, that is the best 1-2 punch in baseball. Now, they still need to fill out some of the depth behind there, and, that maybe be the only way I would put the Braves over them, because I think the Braves do have more depth and better depth. But, I mean, when you have those two guys at the top, hard not to put them number 1. I do have the Braves at number 2, mostly because of that depth. I do think Fried, could be a potential Cy Young candidate. Morton, as long as he's healthy, he's going to continue to get close to 200 strikeouts or more. I think Ian Anderson, he can take a small step forward in 2022, which we'll talk about later. And then, like I said, I love the depth that the Braves have there with guys like Davidson and Muller and Wright, who already have big league experience, World Series experience for Davidson and Wright. So I really like the depth there, and Noah as well. and certainly others coming. So I love the depth of the Braves, and that's why I have them at number 2. At number 3, I'm going to go with the Marlins. Again, some great young arms with more coming. Like I said, would not be surprised if by the end of the year they are one of the best rotations in the NL East, if not all of baseball. A lot of really good arms there, pitching a very pitcher-friendly park as well. But they are very talented, very good arms, and will be for years to come. I got the Phillies at 4. Again, I'm very curious to see how Aaron Nola does in 2022. If you look at his baseball savant page, it would tell you he was very unlucky in 2021. So perhaps there's a huge bounce back there for him. And if that's the case, Zach Wheeler very easily could have won the Cy Young last year. So you're looking at, again, another great 1-2 punch in the starting rotation in this division. But they have some issues behind those two. They certainly need some depth. I think they need to go out and find another starter this offseason, a very reliable and good middle of the rotation starter. But there are there's a lack of depth there. And if Nola doesn't bounce back and maybe Wheeler regresses a little bit, I think this rotation could be in trouble. And then I have the Nats at 5. And again, I mean, you look at the names here in Strasburg and Corbin, it looks like it could be a good 1-2, but can't really count on the health of Strasburg. I know I said I was going to be, assuming everyone's going to be healthy, but even if he is, Corbin has taken a step back for sure. I do like Josiah Gray. I think he continues to get better in 2022. And like I said, I mentioned Cade Cavalli. Who knows? He was one of the best pitchers in all of minor league baseball last year. If he continues to improve like that, he may get a shot in 2022 at some point. So they have a couple of young starters there getting ready to take over the mantle, but in a very good division filled with great starting pitching, I have to put the Nats at 5th here. So let me know your rankings. How would you rank these NL East starting rotations? But next, I want to take a look at Ian Anderson and whether or not he could be in for a breakout year in 2022. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full swing for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball, but BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so again, part of the Braves starting rotation being as good as it has been and where I think could be one of the best in not just the NL East, but all of baseball is because of that depth. And I think it has a chance to be even better in 2022 if Ian Anderson can take a small step forward. I mean, he's been really great in his first 2 years, and so not much is really needed, but I do think there is an opportunity for him to be even better. You look at the advanced metrics for Ian Anderson in 2021, and they weren't pretty. There's a lot of blue on that baseball savant page with a low K rate, a higher walk rate. Although his walk rate was better than 2020 and one of the best he's had in a while, but still, too high for where it should be. His xERA was 74 points higher than his actual ERA, which would tell you maybe there was some luck involved there. His barrel percentage was just 1.2% in 2020. Again, very small sample size. That shot up all the way to 9.5% in 2021. He doesn't get a ton of hitters to chase pitches outside the zone. However, his whiff rate is above average, sitting about the 65th percentile there on Baseball Savant. So, looking at that and looking at his Savant page, I guess you could say there are plenty of ways for him to take a step forward in 2022. And obviously, I don't want to discredit what he has done. He's found success at the big league level doing what he does and working that fastball changeup combination. I mean, he has a 3.25 ERA in 160 2/3 big league innings. That's not a fluke at this point. Anybody that watches him knows That's his success is not a fluke. Not to mention he's been a monster in the postseason. A 1.26 ERA in 35 and 2/3 postseason innings, going 4-0 in 8 starts. I mean, just an absolutely unbelievable start to his postseason career. So the guy is good. I mean, he knows how to pitch. He knows how to get big league hitters out. That is for sure. How can he be even better at that? And how can he be more dominant? And, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I want to see. Nothing in particular when you look at his numbers or his metrics would point to a breakout necessarily coming. But one thing I wouldn't mind seeing him do is work on a pitch that's breaking more horizontally away from righties. He has his four-seam fastball, which is pretty flat, which is fine because of how he manipulates it off the changeup, which is not flat and dives and has fade into right-handed hitters. So I mean that's works, and that's what his bread and butter is. He's going to work that fastball changeup combination, and it really tunnels well off of each other, especially at the speed in which he throws his changeup in the high 80s and his fastball in the mid 90s. It works really well, and you've seen the success of that. So that's not going to change. And he does throw the curveball, which has some horizontal break into lefties, but certainly nothing like a slider or something like that would. More horizontal plane rather than vertical plane. So that's one thing, and I'm not saying that's easy or that he's could just do that, especially with his overhanded release. I don't know how you throw a slider off of that release, but or something that has that much horizontal movement on it. But it would be nice to have something to pair with that changeup that does have good fade into righties to be able to have a pitch at similar velocity that breaks into left-handed hitters. So that's one thing perhaps he could work on as he gets older. Look, pitchers change their pitches throughout their career. That's how they stay relevant. That's how they keep pitchers or hitters off balance. They have to add in a pitch every now and then. I think it might benefit Anderson to do that at some point. Not necessary. Again, he can still dominate with what he's doing, but that's one area or something that I think he could do that would elevate his game. But the one thing and the main obvious thing when you look at his numbers is cutting down on the walks. And anybody that's watched an Ian Anderson start, they can be somewhat frustrating at times because it just seems like he loses command and he'll walk 3 or 4 batters. Even in the World Series game, Dusty Baker commented after it saying that he was somewhat effectively wild. And there's some truth to that. I mean, I think he kept those Astros hitters off balance with his good stuff, but he was also a little all over the place. And, I would like to see him cut down on those walks, have better command of that pitch. His changeup just moves so much. I think sometimes when he throws it, he doesn't have any idea how much it's actually going to break down or into righties. It just has so much movement on it. But, I mean, the obvious thing that he can do is just to cut down on the walks. That's been pretty high for him in his career. It's been over 10%. It was at 9.9% last year as far as his walk percentage goes. If he could get that down to just 6 or 7, that would do wonders for him, in limiting base runners, limiting runners for runners from scoring, and allowing him to go deeper into games, making him become more of a 6 or 7 inning pitcher instead of a 5 or 6 inning pitcher. Because one of the frustrations with Ian Anderson is he will run up that pitch count early just because he does get a little wild at time and he'll walk some batters. But there is no questioning the fact that he knows how to get hitters out. He knows how to keep them off balance with that fastball changeup combination, and he has succeeded with that at the big league level. I think he will continue to do so. But I just think, perhaps work on a fourth pitch. I know he has a sinker as a fourth pitch. He doesn't really throw it all, but work on a fourth pitch with some horizontal movement going into lefties, cut down on the walks, and just don't get injured. And I think we could see a breakout season for Ian Anderson in 2022. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not a resolution at all because I actually enjoy eating them. And have you tried their puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. In fact, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And like I said, they are delicious. Got flavors like mint and brownie, coconut almond. They have the new white chocolate cookies and cream. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. This episode is also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket where you can do that yourself. So save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, sometimes even 100% more for the exact same part from a chain store or new car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even a new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck. And while you're there, please write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, waited a little later in the day on Monday to record because it is a deadline day, but I have pretty much given up on it at this point. We are headed towards a delayed season if the owners stick to what they said, and who can trust those guys? But it looks like we are headed towards a delayed season. These two sides are very far apart, neither giving an inch. They hate each other's guts. I don't see a deal getting done anytime soon. So will the owners actually start canceling games? We will see as the week goes on. Again, Monday was the deadline to get a deal done. That is not happening as far as I can see as I'm recording Monday afternoon. I did want to just mention, how does this benefit or hurt the Atlanta Braves with a delayed season and a shortened season at that? I think the Braves actually could benefit the most from this. I mean, they played extra games last season, so they're rested for this, or they could use the rest from this after having those extra games. So I think they benefit from that. Again, playing deep into the World Series, winning the World Series. So having that extra rest, allowing time for Charlie Morton and Ronald Acuna Jr. to get fully healthy, to be ready to go to start the season. That is huge as well. So I actually think this benefits the Braves. I certainly don't want it. I want the season to start on time, but I have to think that the Braves probably benefit the most out of anyone from a delayed season, a shortened season, just because of everything that happened last year and the injured players they have who are trying to come back. So what's next for these CBA negotiations? Without a deal on Monday, two sides are likely to separate for the time being and then come back together hopefully soon, because as days go by, more and more games are going to get canceled. So hopefully they do get back together soon. Hopefully there's a resolution to this and we can get spring training going, get the offseason going, and get to the 2022 regular season. But a bad day in baseball for sure as these two sides continue to fight it out. That will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. You can follow me at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.